Hello, everybody, and welcome. I am Jared Chung from CareerVillage.org, and I am pleased to be your host for today's discussion. If you have read the news lately, you've probably seen some wildly disparate stories about AI, about the labor market. We've got headlines saying that AI is eliminating jobs at record speed. We've got reports saying that the impact is minimal. Which is it? And more importantly, what does it mean for job seekers, for students, for young people, especially for young people, and also for the leaders in the education and workforce development sector who are trying to support them? Over the course of this conversation, we're going to try to unpack what's going on with the labor market, with AI, with navigation. And it's a really meaty subject, so for sure. So we're going to need some help to unpack it all. And to do that, I am pleased to be joined now by two really incredible guests. We have Carrie McKittrick, who is a co-director of the Project on Workforce at Harvard. She and her team and colleagues have been producing some really important research on how people find and use career information, how AI is reshaping learning and skills, and how our workforce systems themselves might need to adapt. Welcome, Carrie.
Thanks for having me. Excited for the conversation.
Excited to have you here. We also have with us Anish Raman, who is LinkedIn's Chief Economic Opportunity Officer. He and his team have been digging into data that shows us how skills, how jobs, how opportunity is shifting in real time, and doing a lot of great work thinking about how job seekers can navigate that. Welcome, Anish.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, we want to jump in. I think to break this conversation down, I'm thinking about sort of structuring it a little bit sequentially. We're going to start with taking stock just of the state of the labor market before we even consider AI. What it really is the nature of what we're dealing with. And then we'll talk about AI, we'll talk about navigation and deep dive where we can. So first off, I want to start with just a reflection on the kind of market that we deal with. And the way I think about this often is I compare it. I have a business background, and compare it against a lot of other markets. In most commodity markets, you have buyers and sellers. You've got supply demand, and there's usually a pretty clean and efficient, market mechanism. You've got a lot of passing of information. Buyers are really good at assessing whether the supply is going to meet their needs. If you're buying cold rolled coiled steel, you know exactly the questions that you need to ask about the characteristics of the product and the delivery date, and boom, the market clears. In the labor market, we don't have that kind of a market. So I think before we even take into account AI, I just wanted to start by getting your perspectives. How do you think about where the labor market is effective, is not effective? Who does it work for? And kind of starting off with the tough question, does this market ever really work? So I'd love to start maybe, Anish, with you. What's your perspective on the labor market before we even consider AI as a market?
Yeah, I've believed for some time now that the labor market is one of the least transparent, least dynamic, least efficient markets that humans have ever created. And I love that you opened with that, because if we think about any experience we have where it works well, at the core of that is transparency, at the core of that is dynamism, at the core of that is inclusion, efficiency, all the things that the labor market isn't. And I spent a lot of time as I've tried to figure out what's coming for work, looking at what's happened to work. And if you think about the labor market, it's basically the one we have born out of the industrial age. So it starts the first industrial revolution, when we just suddenly need to do more, better, faster as humans with the technology of the time. So new forms of energy, from steam to electricity, back new forms of technology, from the assembly line to the internet. And everything is about more, better, faster, efficiency, speed, scale. We start to really prioritize these analytical and technical skills. High school only becomes a thing in the industrial age because we need managers and people to start working in the factory at a new level. Then computer science degrees, MBAs, they all build around that core. And so we never really put human potential at the center of it. It was just, can I get humans as quickly as possible to do more, better, faster? And ultimately what happened is we have a labor market that I think is fundamentally based on guesswork. Like, everyone in every job doesn't know if they're overpaid or underpaid, doesn't know if they're overqualified or underqualified, because we measure, the unit of measurement in the labor market is the job title. And that then led to a lot of focus on education as a mechanism of mobility. Get that right degree to get that right title, and you'll have income mobility over time. And that model has come under a lot of duress because of the cost of the degree, the durability of the degree, access, completion, all the things. So before even AI hit, I was doing the work and LinkedIn was doing the work every day of just trying to move the labor market to a skills-based foundation so that we could go from pedigree signals of where'd you go to school, what degree do you have, where'd you work, what job title do you have, who do you know, and do they know me, to a world where we just mapped like what are the things this job needs in terms of skills and what are the skills this person has. And if there's a fit, great. If there's not, the person knows there's a gap and they have ways to go and close that gap. And I would say it was really, really hard. It was really, really hard because the system is so entrenched that when you try to bring skills to the center of how the labor market matches talent and opportunity, when you try to make it more meritocratic, you're dealing with big systems that are really easy. I mean, the labor market works really well with its inefficiencies. It's easier to filter for a degree than for the skills because you need to know what skills you need. Then you need to be able to filter for them with credible credentials. And then all of that changes. You build a skills taxonomy, it's dated within a year or two. So we were just doing the like good, righteous work every day of trying to like fix things here and there, trying to shift things here and there, dealing with centuries of entrenched brokenness. And as we'll get to, AI came along. And early on, I realized, oh, this might be the moment when the brokenness is unsustainable, when everything we've built in the industrial age is not going to serve this new economy. And that's what I'm excited about. We're going to hit a messy period. There's going to be a lot of disruption. There's a lot of unknowns. But at the other end of it, I do think the brokenness won't survive.
I mean, is there a optimistic pessimist sort of interpretation there where you're like, look,
Yeah.
it's so bad that
Yeah.
we just need to come to a real harsh realization of how
Yeah.
bad it
I mean, I
actually is,
love
and
that you
that's about
started.
to happen.
I love that you started with the labor market as is, because early in AI, I was out there with my cause of optimism. And I think for a lot of people, I realized it's much harder to be an optimist than a pessimist with the human brain because we're wired towards fear of change. And so I had to really do my work to have and articulate an optimistic point of view. And at one point, I realized I had to describe it not as optimistic and not even as realist. It was more a point of view born of pessimism about the way of work to date. And
Mm,
that's when people started to get it. Because there's part of what we're going to talk about that
yeah,
is just everyone's afraid of it. And that is understandable and unhelpful because this is irreversible, accelerating. We all just have to
yeah,
start to manage it. But that's
yeah,
not the more important part of the story. The more important part of the story is let's let it go. Let's let go of what we're clinging to that are jobs and work that aren't built for human capability, that were built around efficiency at scale, and that we know have not led to meritocracy in any real form.
yeah. Love that. Carrie, I'd love for
Hmm.
those who are not as familiar with the work at the project at Harvard, could you share with us a little bit about the scope of the work, what you do there, and what's your point of view or your colleagues' point of view around the, to the extent to which we should think of the labor market as being effective?
Yeah. So we're an applied research center. We're a collaboration between the education school, the policy school, and the business school. So we really focus on generating evidence for decision makers, for leaders in business, education, and policy. And so when I think about the system, the labor market, I think of it as, an integrated ecosystem engaging all of those stakeholders. And so we believe that any kind of theory of change, any action needs to include everyone. And so I think, to Anisha's point around, are we coming to this kind of come to Jesus moment, for lack of a better word? I think over the past several years, we've seen employers come to the table in a really kind of new way, born from need, right? Like, and so I think we've seen folks learning or willing to engage in more kind of creative methods for building talent pipelines. And I think that's also a helpful framework to think about this talent as a supply chain.
Mhm.
And looking at, when we look at it, looking at some of the different pieces and different parts that create friction or that are broken throughout that chain. And I think that's changing now with AI. There are a lot of structural kind of changes that we've been grappling with for a really long time. And that chain is not as agile enough as it needs to be. It's not equitable like it needs to be. Um, but now I think we're also seeing that some of the ladders, some of the supply chain ladders in terms of talent development that we've counted on are also changing. And so some of the career pathways that we've looked at within a company, for example, to build entry level talent to senior talent are also changing. And I think that's a new friction that we're starting to see. And employers really do need to come to the table in addition to policymakers and educators.
Yeah, it's a perfect segue. I think this is the perfect time to move into AI's impacts. One of the things that we've been thinking a bit about at Career Village is really understanding the way that AI is differentially affecting the different aspects of the labor market. It has a different impact on supply from on demand. It has a different impact on the mechanics of the places where supply and demand meet. It has different impacts on all the other things that are happening around the labor market. And in order to make a prediction of what's going to happen, you've got to be able to have an understanding of those different impacts and how the whole market's going to react to each other. It's not a simple exercise. And I think as the segue here, that is why we are finding that there's so much variability in the expectations around what's going to happen. When we are talking to people about AI in the labor market, I'll tell you the number one thing that most folks are reacting with is overwhelm. The number of headlines that are just completely disagreeing with, or seem to be completely disagreeing with each other in predicting what's going to happen is pretty wild. So I want to dig into that a little bit. There's a lot of noise out there, but we have a couple of things that I want to draw your attention to. It's been for months we've had news that suggested a really large number of jobs would be created. We have back in, I want to say, the start of the year, the World Economic Forum released predictions that said that we were going to have, a net gain of 80 million jobs. Shortly after that, Goldman Sachs estimated 300 million roles would vanish. Goldman Sachs research just a couple weeks ago then released a new prediction that said that AI won't really have much impact at all. This month, however, has been pretty notable. We had the MIT study that came out over the past few weeks that showed the vast majority of firms' AI initiatives were failing. And then we have the research that just came out of Stanford's digital, I think it's the Digital Economy Lab, Economics Lab, the Canary in the Coal Mine paper, right, which looked at large-scale data from ADP, the America's largest payroll company, and found that there are starting to be impacts of AI on occupations for younger workers who are in AI susceptible or automation susceptible occupations. So I just love to start off with the headline chaos out there. Let's just start off with Carrie, Anish, do you feel the overwhelm when you're reading these headlines, or have you found a way? Just help us deal with how to deal with it, right? How do you process that? And Carrie, I'd love to ask you first. I mean, are you able to find a centered place with the sort of chaos of what's happening out there?
It's a great question. I think when landmark reports like the Canary and the coal mine come out, it offers some clarity. I think there's been a lot of kind of confusion and uncertainty around the impact on entry-level jobs, and this really provides some compelling evidence that's where a lot of the changes so far. I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of skeptical of anyone who makes 100% confident predictions about where things are going to go. I
Sure.
think we don't know. We know work is changing, of course, but we don't know what skills are going to be required. We don't know how the market is going to reshift. I think right now we're seeing a lot of, generative AI kind of put on existing processes and existing roles. And we'll see those processes, the roles changing, and that'll have huge effects. We're going to see innovation the same way we couldn't have predicted what happened, post internet, right? Like we're not going to be able to predict that. I try to ground myself in what the evidence is saying. So, I look to the folks at Stanford. I encourage folks to look at our research at the Project on Workforce, coming out of MIT and the like. That's really looking at what's happening now. I think that's the best way to ground ourselves at the moment, is to say, what are the impacts now? And what can we do to help people adapt now?
Yeah. Yeah, understood. Anish, I'd love to ask, given you're close to the data, obviously LinkedIn, a massive player in right where the supply and demand hits. What do you think is happening now? Where are you right now? What do you want people to know about what we know is happening now?
I think what we've lost a little bit, and I saw a clip from Cal Newport on Mel Robbins' podcast talking about this in the day-to-day of life, given work is about more, better, faster, is the time in the day to think. And so I think what I'd encourage everyone to do is don't get caught up in the what's the latest evidence, what is the predetermined outcome. None of this is predetermined. All of it will come down to the choices we make as individuals, organizations, societies now. All you got to do is make sure that every day you're engaging with the technology a little bit more to get used to it. You're understanding its implications for your job and career a little bit more. And then you're building what we think will be the durable skills around resilience, adaptability, these core human things we bring to innovation. But if you take a step back, and that's where I find the most comfort, it's looking back, not trying to guess what's coming ahead. First of all, just look at AI. At the beginning, it was, is it crypto or the internet? Is it even real? And we went through that whole cycle. And there were a lot of big skeptics that this thing is going to be gone in a matter of months. Then it was like, okay, it's real. Is it going to be overnight or over decades? As if those were the only two possibilities. And we were caught in that like spin for a bit, that swirl. Now we're in the sort of like, it's real, it's big, it's happening. And that's all we're going to know for a bit. And so guessing beyond that, I don't know whether that's helpful. Now, we can also look back again to know what's coming. If you start with an assumption that we're in a moment of big history, of big change when it comes to work, and I think it'll end up being the biggest disruption to work in human history, then you realize, okay, first thing, the knowledge economy is on the way out. A new economy is on the way in. When a new economy comes, when we went from the farm to the factory or from the goods economy to the knowledge economy, generally 4 phases play out. Disruption hits first, like the thing is real and it's in the day-to-day. We've got data 90%, for example, of C-suite globally say AI adoption top priority for this year. 20x year over year increase in LinkedIn members adding AI skills. So it's here and it's in the day-to-day. Phase 2 is jobs change. We've got data, 70% of the skills for the average job will have changed by 2030. So we're all going to be in new jobs soon, even if we don't change jobs. So disruption is hit. We're in the moment of job change. Phase 3 is new jobs emerge. And we haven't really seen that happen. We've seen AI jobs emerging, like head of AI jobs are up 3x in 5 years on LinkedIn. But MIT has a stat, 60% of employment in 2018 didn't exist in 1940. Like in the early 90s, when they were sitting having these conversations, early thinkers about the internet, no one was like, hey, I think this thing called data scientist is going to be a thing. Or I think it's going to lead to this creator economy where like influencer might become a thing. No one could have like conceivably imagined that. That's what we're in. We cannot conceivably imagine these net new jobs. There are some places, my job title got made up a year ago by our CEO and I. It's a prototype, I think, of what's coming. It's a job title that exists purely for the skills I bring to the company I'm at the moment we're at. So everyone's going to have that play out across different levels. And then the 4th phase is you enter a new economy. And so now what we should be thinking about is both how do we deal with the disruption? How do we help people who are in jobs that are most vulnerable to getting upended so that they have the tools and wherewithal to transition? And how do we help people who are lacking access to AI and awareness of AI? I think about the global South a lot there. Those are the 2 groups we have to focus on. And as we focus on them, every day we should set directionally this goal of better work, this goal of a better labor market. And I think that that is imminently possible because AI is both a force of change, but a tool that helps people learn new things in new ways. It helps people build new products in new ways with lower cost of investments. I think it has the potential to flip the script from 200 years of us serving technology to finally technology serving us and helping us unleash human innovation and ingenuity at all levels. Like we're going to go beyond collar. We're going to go beyond function. There are different ways this plays out for jobs, for careers, for companies, for economies. So that's where I'm at. I just think if you can get to where you accept this as a big change, and you can push past the understandable, unhelpful fear, then you get to a today plan and you don't have to worry about a 10-year plan. And your today plan is just, are you using these tools more and more to understand it? Are you thinking about what that means for your job and career? And then are you doing work, if you care about the system stuff, to move the systems to a better place?
Yeah, I love that. I think what I'm hearing from both of you here are complementary, but different orientations a little bit. And I think at the end of the day, what I'm taking away from this is that we've got to earmark time to have these thought processes. We've got to earmark time in our day, in our week, in our month to make sure that we are taking a look at what is verifiably known so far. We've got to track what's happening. We have to take time as well to step back from the chaos of the headlines and to think about the trends while still recognizing, Anish, as you said, and I won't nail the paraphrasing here, but that the future is not been decided yet. It is our actions that will determine what the path is. So I think that's going to take some time. And I appreciate very much that you brought the conversation to how do we help people navigate. Let's shift to that. That is our bread and butter here at Career Village. We are all about navigation, focused on what we call here the supply side of this labor market, but we just affectionately think of as people. Navigation, so important. The pace of change is really overwhelming. It's really rapid. Carrie, at the Harvard Project on Workforce, you've been doing a lot of work on navigation. You came out with a report back in April called The Navigation Opportunity, which was looking at how low-wage earners are navigating the moment. I'd love to ask, what is it like for job seekers right now? Where are they? How are they navigating the labor market? And what can we learn about how we might be able to reach folks to help them navigate?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question. And career navigation has been a big focus of my research for a while. And the system wasn't working before, right? And now, as things are changing faster than ever, I think the system, the way people find and connect to and integrate opportunities is going to become more crucial. So we did some research. We wanted to understand how people actually navigate their careers. How do they actually get information? Because we know that good information about the labor market can help people make adaptive career decisions. So we've seen, for example, there are studies of community college students. When they're shown actual salaries of jobs, they're more likely to change majors, right? So information matters. We wanted to understand where people go for information. And what we found is the majority are getting information from family and friends. So most are not getting it from, online. And we're talking about low wage workers here. And this helps explain a phenomenon that we've seen in the labor market where low wage workers tend to cycle in and out of low wage jobs. And each additional year that you're in a low wage job makes it less likely that you'll advance. And so when people are kind of networking with those within their socioeconomic bracket and they're connecting to other jobs that continue to be low wage, we're going to see what we see, which is that 5 years later, 60% of low wage workers are still in a low wage job. And so we wanted to understand, well, A, how are they already navigating? But B, also what's possible. And I think, technology is going to play a huge role there. And there's a lot of excitement, but we can't forget the people piece. We can't forget that people are actually hearing from word of mouth. So right now we're doing focus groups to kind of to augment the quantitative data. And what we hear is, I heard about the job from a friend of mine, or I was recommended down from someone down the street. Um, and that's really how decisions are being made, and it leads to not always adaptive decisions. Of course, if you're from a high income bracket and you're hearing about jobs from your parents' friend or from your alumni network at Harvard or wherever, you're going to have a very different experience. And that social capital in high income brackets is certainly expanding access for those folks. But we need to make sure that that doesn't just get contained or kind of limited to folks who happen to be born with resources or have had the chance to go to an elite university.
Yeah, I think that we talk a lot about social capital, and that really is something a lot of folks are investing more in. But it sort of strikes me that we're at this place, and I think it's as well, if you think about what's happening with the number of applications per job, and there's just
Yeah.
chaos of like right in the middle of the job market where employers are looking at this like increasing stack of applications, having a lot more to go through, many of them AI generated, than are, in many cases, we're hearing, turning to network in
Yeah.
order to find people to hire. And it really just brings up, once again, the social capital piece. Anish, you've talked about the relationship economy as being something we might move toward. It seems almost like social capital is both an opportunity and a challenge. It's a challenge for equity. It's a challenge for inclusion in the economy, but it's an opportunity, and it's how the mechanics of the market might start to look. Just love to hear, does that resonate? Or you think about it that way, or do you think of social capital? Is it a double-edged sword, or is it just opportunity?
Double-edged sword. I think, look, what's hard is we're living in two worlds at once, the old world and the new world. And each of us are at different stages of moving from old to new. And even in our day-to-day, our calendar is old world, new world, old world, maybe mostly old world. I get to live mostly new world. So it's really hard for the brain because they're like, we're trying to solve math equations with two different sets of math, like, know-how. The social capital reality of the old world was bad. I mean, it was because of the opaqueness of the labor market. Again, because everything was guesswork, people just didn't know what they needed to know to get ahead. And we made it tremendously difficult for people who weren't born into privilege to figure it out. Because for a while we said, go get a degree. But then we said, well, degrees shouldn't be about vocational training. So
Sure.
get a degree, but do it in a broad, mushy way that's going to be hard for you to explain what that means for a job. And then you're not going to know who you're supposed to know or what you're supposed to say or what job to take or when to move. But if you're born into the right zip code, like, we're going to help you figure this all out. Like, go get a degree. As long as you have the right institution, the degree matters a little less. Or we just heard CS. Like, it was a complete information asymmetry. And that got entrenched by just who got to find out the rules before others. I'm a child of immigrants. I mean, born into communities of privilege, Wellesley, Massachusetts, went to Harvard, but I didn't know what compound interest was until
Right.
like a few years ago. And when I was a war correspondent at CNN, I had income I could have put in the market, but I was like told to put it in a high interest savings CD-ROM back then. Like,
Right.
a 20-minute conversation would have given me a little bit more financial freedom
Yeah.
now. So that's just one example of it. So old world, I think, it was one of the things that was causing the brokenness. And Lost Einstein's, the research of Rod Shetty at Harvard, the proximity bias, like, you only believe you can be what you can see around you, like, all of that is that. In the new world, it's going to become a real opportunity. So first, our data this month, we just put out some data, shows people are overwhelmed. They don't know what's happening, like we've talked about. Any AI training they're doing feels like a second job. It's just a lot.
Yeah.
But what was encouraging to me is people aren't trying to figure that out by going to search engines or ChatGPT for all the memes of like, tell me what I should say to my wife who's in front of me. People are turning to other people. Yes, family, friends, but increasingly, like, we know other people know us best to know how to figure this out together. And if you think about where work is going, and this is like the big meta point, we spent a lot of time talking about artificial intelligence. Step back and let's think about human intelligence for a bit. The human brain is the most remarkable thing on earth. As advanced as AI is and is getting, like, the human brain, I would say, is as good or better at like everything. We know it has neuroplasticity and it can like learn new things. We know that the ability to master new things can happen at any age. Like, we don't even know the fullness of what exists at the intersection of consciousness and conscience for us as humans. So to say AI can beat us, we don't even know how we do what we do best. We just have to build work around what we do best. And what we do best is imagine and invent. We as a species saw fire and said, let's cook. We saw birds and said, let's go build flight as a thing. Like, we have always imagined and invented, but over time, it's been very few people, as the Lost Einstein's research shows, that have been able to do that. I mean, Raj looked at patent filings and then was able, through IRS and Social Security numbers, to go back and look at the beginnings of those folks. And in those communities, there was equal aptitude at STEM in third grade. And then higher wealth kids were 10 times more likely to file patents. So like, there's a breakdown there.
Yeah.
But AI is going to upend all that. Like, everything we do at work is going to have to be more about being entrepreneurial and coming up with new ideas. More and more people will do that as work, as entrepreneurs. For the first time ever, we'll attempt as broad an arena of human innovation as it ever has been attempted. And in that world, it's not just, can you be pro-you, pro-human and pro-you, and realize you've got to develop these core human skills. I call them the 5 C's: curiosity, compassion, courage, creativity, communication. but you've got to then do it with others. I mean, connection is how knowledge breathes. It's how it builds. If you look at human history, it's sort of like up to the printing press, things were pretty stable and incremental. Printing press starts to just spread knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff that had to be passed down over generations through word of mouth, it's now everywhere all at once. That then becomes the internet, which spreads connection. And we're at this moment where innovation, I think, what we've done in the last 500 years, we might come close to it in the next 50 across a broader range of issues, from climate to fixing the labor market and economic mobility. But it's going to be because more humans are able to innovate, and that more humans are doing that together, which is
I
all
feel the same.
out of that social capital.
I think what we've been, Carrie, you had brought up earlier in the conversation how important agility is in the systems that we create. It's a major challenge, something that we spend a lot of time working on, trying to make sure that we're helping the institutions and systems be agile. But I think all of us here recognize that there is tremendous agility in the individuals. People are wildly agile when they know where they want to go. They will go and they will get those skills and they will be ready for those jobs. We've got to help them see the path, make good choices, and be informed in as best we can what we think is going to be happening. So I think what I want to do here is I want to shift into our last big question here. I'm going to make it a little bit of a lightning round here. But what are your influences and what do you think people should be trying to keep an eye on? What do you want them to subscribe to? What do you want them to be following? I know that, Carrie, I'd like to ask specifically at the project. There's been some incredible research coming out of the project being published. I'm thinking of Professor Fuller's recent piece, the expertise upheavals, a lot of other, great stuff coming. So for each of you, let's just take Carrie first, and then Anish will go to you. Who are you following? What do you subscribe to? What podcasts or newsletters, and where do you want people to be keeping an eye to get their news over the coming months and years?
Yeah, well, of course, I have to start with the project on workforce. So, Joe Fuller doing amazing work. He is, one of the partners on this career navigation work, but also is probably one of the, foremost experts on employers and organizations, and the way he's thinking about how organizational processes are impacting AI adoption, and expertise is impacting, is huge. David Deming at the Project on Workforce as well, thinking about these durable or soft skills and what are the skills that are going to make someone good at using AI. Is it judgment? Is it adaptability? Is it the creativity? What does that look like? I'll say, and one more faculty I have to talk about, of course, Rafaela Sadoun, who's been doing some really interesting work on AI as a teammate. So those are some of the Harvard folks that I would plug. I'd also say someone I watch very closely is David Otter at MIT. I think he's had really, really thoughtful explorations for a very long time on the hollowing out of the middle class from automation. And so always looking to see what he puts out and what his vision is for applying AI to kind of rebuild the middle class. Stanford, of course. One of the folks I'm a big fan of is Julia Freeland Fisher, who's doing some amazing work on social capital. And then my last plug is at the Christensen Institute. And my last plug is that this is a workforce system problem. This is a systemic problem, and we need to be understanding what's happening up at the state and federal level. And we didn't really talk about policy, but that's a crucial part. And so my favorite newsletter is Paul Fain's The Job, which follows what's happening in the workforce space. So I will stop there, although I could probably go on for an hour.
Tremendous shout out to Paul Fain, who's doing some incredible work. Work Shift, The Cusp. He's got a lot of good pieces of content out there. Anish, love to turn to you. Who do you want folks to be following? What do you want them to subscribe to so they can stay up to date on the latest?
Well, I can just speak for myself. There are two things I do every day to just be in the know. First, and this isn't a cop out, it's the easy answer given where I work, but LinkedIn I think of as like the world's classroom right now. It's the largest network of professionals ever assembled, over 1 billion members in over 200 countries and territories, at a time when every human in every society is going through change in the same ways at a macro level. So getting on LinkedIn, but really doing some work to curate your feed. One of the things we did a while ago was you didn't have to just be connected to someone to see their posts. you could follow people. And the thesis there was it's not just, what you know, but who you know. That's the whole networks matter. But it's not just who you know, but what they know. So getting access to other people's knowledge who you don't know is this really powerful unlock that the follow feature has.
Yeah.
So come on LinkedIn, everyone that you just heard, every name, everyone that's suggested, go find people that look like you. We've got semantic search now. So say like whatever you want to put as the characteristics, like see if someone's out there on LinkedIn who's posting, follow them. And think of it as like a conversation. Dive into the things that you want to comment on, change people that you follow. If it starts to feel like you don't need to follow that anymore, you want to follow someone new. So really invest in that, because I don't think there's any other place on earth where you can every day see the latest thoughts and follow a bunch of different views, because you want to live in sort of the intersection of opposing views to just gut check how you feel and see what are the consistent themes that you can actually action. And then the other thing I do is I have for years now had a Google News alert that every few months I'll change the terms, but it's, at this point, maybe 20 different terms. Like the minute, it was about economic mobility and economic opportunity and economic freedom. Then it was about skills-based hiring and, workforce systems, and AI came in and it was about AI, then human intelligence. So I've evolved the terms over time, but I will read that no matter what. Like every day I will stop and go through that. And I've got, amazingness of the human brain. I've gotten better at hacking, like how to go through it. But if I can't, for some reason, I'm too busy, I save it. Like I don't delete that email until I've gone through it. So you just want to immerse yourself a little bit with whatever moments you can. And that's really hard. And it's a privilege to have time to think. So you've got to find ways that take the burden off of you and just put you into the conversations as they're happening.
That sounds great. All right. And on that note, we will end there. Make sure among all those folks that you're following and different sources that you follow Anish and Carrie as well. They are publishing some really great stuff. We're going to have several more of these. I hope that all of you watching will join us for the future ones and stay in the know. Follow Career Village to get notified when those come out. Definitely feel free, post your comments or reflections on this so that we can use that to inform what you'd like to learn more about, who you'd like to come and be a guest speaker for discussions that we're going to be jumping into. You can really guide the conversation and what we talk about here. We do want to take a moment here at the end to acknowledge some of the people and organizations who helped make this event possible. Obviously, Carrie and Anish, thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank the Career Village staff who organized it all, the LinkedIn Social Impact team, and all of our partners. And lastly, thank you all for being here with us today, and we will see you at the next one.